Welcome to the Patience and Progress audio experience with your host, Jake Butler. In life, it's important to have patience, but also make progress. This episode is brought to you by Butler Capital, Rich Kid Camp Online, and Money University. Put your hands together for a former school teacher turned full-time real estate investor, Jake Butler.
Okay, I see Drake just came into Drake. If you can hear me, go ahead and put I can hear you in chat, so I know that you can hear me. Hey Drake, how you doing today? Okay, glad to see. We just had another person come into the room. Good to see you, Tori. If you can hear me, put I can hear you in chat, just so I can make sure that everyone can hear me. Just put I can hear you in the comments. Okay, awesome. This is my first time on the Clubhouse app. I've been trying to make sure I had everything organized so I could see. So we had over 50 people registered. So I'm pretty sure that as we progress each week, it'll continue to increase. I have an email database of over 80,000, and I'm just starting to get those emails out starting yesterday. So within the next 2 weeks, I'm pretty sure that things will continue to expand and continue to grow. But recently, I was interviewed on a podcast. I'll probably send out the link. And a lot of people wanted to know how I purchased my first home or my first investment property with only $500. That podcast got a lot of reviews. So I thought that, okay, you know what? I'll start back with my classes. And normally my classes were about 2 or 3 hours, but I'm going to break it down for 30 minutes each week and just cover topics that are trending in the real estate community, but most importantly, just how to make money in general from real estate. I just did a tax deed transaction last week where I made $18,000. Used no money out of my own pocket. The initial investment was $5,000, which I got $5,000 from an investor. I had it, but there had been an investor that been wanting to invest in real estate. They were quite leery. So once I came across this deal, then I said, you know what, let me bring this investor in and show him how these things work. So we send out about 1,000 postcards a month for properties that are coming up on tax deed foreclosure sale. They're getting ready to be auctioned off within the next 30 days. They have a scheduled auction date with the court. And by targeting those individuals before the auction date, a lot of times you can get the property for for the amount that's owed in back taxes, plus maybe a little bit more. Sometimes the homeowner wants anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000. It can be a house or it could be a vacant lot. But in Florida, those properties are at least 3 years behind in back taxes, so they become a tremendous opportunity to purchase, where the individual is either going to lose it, or if they happen to get a postcard or a phone call from you, you're likely to get the property. We send out postcards because postcards have 100% read rate, where you don't have to open a letter, and hope that they read it. If someone gets a postcard in the mail, then obviously they read it. The key, or I'm not going to say the trick, but the key is to skip trace the data and find the current mailing address, the potential current mailing address of the homeowner, because of the property owner. Because if someone's 3 years behind on their taxes and this happens to be a vacant lot or happens to be a single family home, they probably don't live there anymore. Or if it was a vacant lot, maybe someone, unfortunately passed away and they left they never went to the property appraiser's office or called in or mailed in and changed the address where the taxes are being sent. And that happens over about, I would say, 85 to 90% of the time. So if you skip trace the current owner's information, a lot of times you'll find a different mailing address than what the property appraiser has on file. So by contacting that mailing address, you end up reaching the owner of the property, and they end up, you end up not having a lot of competition for that particular lot. So that's happened about 4 or 5 times just in the past year. So that's just kind of a side thing that brings in probably about 50,000 a year, separate from my commercial holdings, which buying commercial property is the primary thing that I do, and that's the primary way to acquire wealth. Single family homes is cool, but once you do one, you got to do another one, then you got to do another one. Where if you own a commercial property, a commercial apartment building, commercial warehouse, or industrial property, you can just one deal one time can actually bring in more than a substantial amount to live off of. So I encourage people to at least learn about commercial real estate. Some people are a little bit afraid of the larger numbers, analyzing property that are 2, 3, 5, 10 million. But if you can get past that, then owning commercial real estate is not out of the realm and can actually be done a lot easier than residential. Any questions on anything that I've mentioned so far? If you just raise your hand, I'll unmute your microphone, and I'm happy to answer any question that you have from anything that I mentioned. All right, let's see. Okay, someone put a question in chat. How do you get started in commercial real estate? Okay, so commercial real estate and residential are obviously two different things. Up to 4 units is a residential property by FHA guidelines. Once you get past 4 units, it's considered commercial. So there are 5 categories for commercial: office building, shopping centers, warehouses, industrial property, and retail shopping centers. So those are the 5 different areas. The easiest way is your everyday travels. If you happen to see a commercial property in one of those categories, write down the address, and you go to the property appraiser site and look up the owner. There's a location not far from me. It used to be leased to doctors. It's been out of business for about, I would say, 6-7 years. It's just been vacant, sitting there. And not long ago, I looked up the owner because I said, you know what? I should buy that building and maybe lease it to individuals, doctors that are doing surgery. So recently, I just started looking into that property. Recently contacted the current owners and negotiating to potentially buy it. And that happened just driving down the street. So that's one of the easiest ways, is to, just in your everyday travels, if you happen to, see a building in one of those categories that I mentioned, write down the address, look up the owner. But you'll need to know how to evaluate the property. And that's not this podcast, but this particular class isn't about that. But if you go to Jake Butler it's not the right website. If you go to realestatejb.com, realestatejb.com, J for Jake, B for Butler, realestatejb.com, at the very bottom, there's a free webinar on how to make profits in commercial real estate. So check that out, and let me know what your questions are. Drake, you have a question? Let's see. Invite to speak. Let me see if Drake has a question. You've been unmuted, Drake, if you want to go ahead and ask your question. Let's see. All right, we can come back to you. Any other questions before I go into the difference between tax certificates and tax deeds? That's another good component where you can make a good amount of money without using and each week. Okay, Drake, you're on now. We can hear you. Go right ahead with your question.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go right ahead with your question, Drake. How you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I can't complain. No complaints.
Okay, this might be a stupid question, but I was just thinking maybe this is how you would evaluate. And I know you would know, and I wanted to know if this is kind of like a simpler way besides running comps on a property. I saw a property a few days ago for like 1.2 million. It was like
Okay.
a 4 2-bedroom building, right? Like a quadplex or whatever they call it.
Okay.
In Hollywood, right? And I saw that condos, like, okay, so you have 4 units, 4 2-bedroom units, going for 1.2, but the average condo, 2-bedroom condo in that area, is going for from 160 to was it 200 to 260, right?
1.2,
And yeah,
1.2
well,
million.
the building was 1.2. It was 4 2-bedroom units.
Okay, single family
Okay,
home.
no. This is like a commercial, I guess. Well, not necessarily a commercial building, but a residential building.
So it's a fourplex.
It's a fourplex.
Okay.
Okay, so I said, okay, 1.2, and my first reaction was, okay, good location. It wasn't too far from Young Circle, and I said, it was interesting. So I said, okay, well, let me look at what 2-bedroom, just in case, maybe I can condo it out or whatever. What are the 2-bedroom condos going for in that area? And I
Mhm.
saw the condos going for 200, between 2 to 260, right? And so I
Okay.
said, well, and I didn't, I didn't run any comps or whatever. I said, could I just times that by 4 and say, okay, 4 times 200 is 800,000. And since, that's going for 1.2, that's a little bit outside of the ballpark of a reasonable number, or, how would you look at that? Besides running like a quick evaluation, or is there a quick evaluation when it comes to, like when you're driving, when, like you said, you were driving down the street, you saw a property, you might have a number in your head, or you might look at other properties. How would you go about even, without, like I said, running comps, or, contacting a real estate agent or whatever? Like, what would, how do you evaluate that?
What was
A quick
the 4
evaluation.
units? What was the breakdown of each unit? Were they all 2 bedroom, 1 bath? Were they one ones? What was the breakdown?
They
Are
were
they
they were all 2-bedroom units, and I think they had like 1.5 baths. So
okay?
the condos that I looked at were comparable to those units, and they were going for 2 to 260.
Okay, so you're kind of looking at it the wrong way. So you were looking
Okay,
at, if I'm not mistaken, this is a fourplex property. It's one building, but it has 4 units all in the same building, correct?
exactly correct.
Okay, so that's a fourplex. So the condo units, that's different. So you would look at it 2 ways. One, you would get comparables of other fourplexes and see what they
Okay,
sold for,
okay,
from the overall sale price, but
gotcha,
also you want to divide that by 4 just to get a price per unit
gotcha,
cost. uh
gotcha.
and you want to make sure, like, you don't want to compare a fourplex that was all 1 bedroom, 1 bath to a fourplex that was all 2 bedroom, 1 bath. So
Exactly,
whatever
exactly.
the breakdown is of that fourplex, you want to, one, get comparables on what other fourplexes have sold for,
Okay,
preferably
okay,
in the subdivision, or
gotcha,
worst case within the zip code. So you want to look at it. That's
gotcha,
one perspective. The other
gotcha.
perspective is you want to take what all of the units would rent for at the average rent amount, um,
Exactly.
and you want to deduct all of the expenses, taxes, insurance, and you want to come to an NOI number, net operating income, and then
Hmm.
you want to take that, and depending on when the construction was done, you want to divide that by like 0.04 or 0.05, and that would give you the value of what an investor would pay if they were looking at buying it from an investment standpoint. So
There you
you'll
go.
have
That's
a
it.
value from an investment standpoint, and you'll have a value from a retail standpoint for a home buyer.
Gotcha, gotcha,
Because with 4 units, a person can still qualify for a FHA loan and put down 3.5% to buy that.
gotcha,
So
gotcha,
you'll have two values. You'll have a investor value, and you'll have kind of like a owner, live-in retail person value.
gotcha, gotcha.
All right. So don't use the condo comps. Use other fourplex comps plus the investor portfolio that I gave you. And then if you were to make an offer, your offer will be below that because you got to make some money going into the deal.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Does that help you?
No, absolutely, absolutely. But now, going on top of that, what would you come in at, regardless? Like, I guess you would get your number first, or would you just say, well, it's 1.2. I'm not going to offer anything more than say 950, or maybe it's one. Maybe I
Well,
don't know. You know,
the first question is how much do you want to make? Normally, on any average deal like that, you would want to walk away with 40 or 50,000.
yeah.
You want to first, so you don't waste too much time. You want to first contact the realtor. Is it listed for sale or it's off market?
No, it's listed for sale. At least it
Okay.
was.
You
Yeah.
don't want to contact them and ask them how much is the owner looking to walk away with, and see if that's within ballpark. So you already know, let's just say 1.2 was the retail value, just for argument purposes, without looking into the stuff. You already know that about 1.1 1,150,000 will probably be your max if you were to make 50,000.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to kind of find out what they're looking for before you waste time putting in the offer. And then if you aren't going to make 40 or 50,000 in the deal, I would leave it alone and start looking for the next deal.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because
Okay.
actually that net price, you probably end up making about 35 after closing costs and all the fees and so forth.
Okay.
You've been listening to another exciting episode of Patience and Progress Investing with Jake Butler. If anything that I've mentioned in the episode resonates with you, you may want to check out my online learning platform, moneyuniversityonline.com, where you'll gain significant knowledge on how to do real estate deals with little to no money down and how to go to the next level using other people's money. That's what everyone wants to do. And if you're looking for a mentor, check out onedealonetime.com. That's the number one, onedealonetime.com, where many of my students have been able to quit their job just over 6 to 8 months of being involved in our mentoring program in residential real estate, commercial real estate, or tax deeds and tax certificates. Now, back to another exciting episode.
I think you got a follow-up question. I can already tell.
Yeah, no, it's really not. It's really something. Years ago, you put some stuff on the board, and it was like rocket science.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to get back to that, but that's like a personal thing that you have to actually physically show me that again. And what it was about was how to negotiate. It was like rocket science to me. It went over my head. I understood from the aspect of the negotiating point, but the mathematics was like calculus. Like, you would, in my head, it went like, it was like calculus,
And what type of
but I
problem was that?
understood it.
That was a
No,
single
it
family?
was like you were talking about how to negotiate a deal with the seller, right? Where and it had some tax implications,
Mm-hmm.
right? Had some tax implications, and it was like you basically you present it to the seller in a way where their listing price, like in this case, their listing price might be 1.2, but you come to them, and it had something to do with taxes. Like, okay, your tax on this deal you're gonna walk away with, because it's the capital gains tax. You put in a lot of stuff that had to do with how the other person may not be thinking how the tax implications were going to be on their end, right? And so that was part of the negotiating, and how you would basically get the property for less, because you would leverage what their tax implication was. And if I'm getting this right, and you would come up, you would help them understand that, listen, I'm going to give you more if you do it this way. It's gonna be a win-win for both me as well as the selling person. And that's
Was
why.
that a class that I had that you came to where I talked about buying a property in a trust
No,
or
no, no,
buying a corporation?
no. This was something you put on the board at the school.
Oh, okay.
And this is like a personal situation where you just went in, and I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. And I said, okay, I got it, and I made a mental note, and said, okay, I got to get with you again on this. In fact, we got to go into a deal where, you know what I'm saying? And you let me know, we got to work this out, because I'm like, yeah, that made a lot of sense.
Okay, well, give me a
And
call later on in the week, and then I can go over
absolutely.
it with you. Personally,
Absolutely.
I'll be happy to do it. Happy to do it. So, no problem at all.
Absolutely.
Any
Thank
other
you. Thank
questions
you.
on the first home acquisition? Now, when I mentioned about how I brought my first property with only $500, what you do is the county, the city, the state a little bit, but mostly the county and city where you're looking to move, they have first time home buyer programs. So what happens is when you go through those programs, they contribute towards your purchase price and your closing costs. And a lot of times you can stack those dollars on top of each other. And that's exactly what I did. And then so that's why my down payment only ended up being $500, which is actually how I got into my first investment property. So I encourage people to definitely, if you're looking to, even if you're not even going to live there, as long as there's no mortgage on your credit within the last 3 years, you can utilize some of those programs. If you're looking to buy your first investment property and you already have a mortgage on your credit, no big deal. I personally started with foreclosures because those are some of the easiest ones, because the property has a definite auction date. So if the owner doesn't make a decision by that date, they're going to lose it. So that, and then also probate is a very lucrative area where not just probate locally, but probate where the person that they call it the petitioner, the person that inherited the estate lives out of state. Okay, so you have to file probate in the same county where the property is located. So what happens is on the data, which it's all public information, the data when the person files to become the owner of the estate, when the family member files, you simply sort it in Excel by all the individuals that live out of the county where the property is, because they're less likely to have personal ties to the property, and a lot of times you can get the property at a steep discount. So I've had a couple students that have done that, and done very well. So if you're looking to get into investing, those are some of the few ways to start. But again, commercial is one of the most lucratives. Any questions at all from what I've mentioned so far? Just raise your hand and I'll call on you. Let me see. Okay, in chat we have a question about residential grants. So a lot of times with those home buyer programs, they want you to live in the property for about 6 months at least, and then after that you can sell it. But if you sell it, then you would have to pay back the money that they gave you. So most people stay there. They don't, have intentions of leaving within 6 months. You can get up to a fourplex, similar to the deal that Drake had mentioned earlier. Someone that's married couple, they could move into that fourplex and rent out the other three sides. 1.2 million, they would have to make combined about 300,000 to qualify for it. But that potential property is not out of the question. It's not out of the question. Not this class, but another class. I'll show you all how to actually look up foreclosures on the county records. It's quite easy, but it's interesting because you just pull up what's going on in your zip code, and then when you drive to work every day, or come home, go to the grocery store, you just go to that list that you downloaded and just start driving by some of these properties that have auction dates within your zip code. So you aren't going way out of your way, to see something that's right in your own neighborhood. And you don't have to buy it, but you can just start to get a feel as to what's going on, what stuff is selling for. And if you want to put in an offer, you definitely certainly can, and you should. But that's a way just to, kind of start getting your feet wet on different investment properties. We have a couple new people just came in. Any questions so far about anything? I'll go into one or two more things. I'll try to keep it. I know everybody's busy, so I'll try to keep it to about 30 minutes every Thursday. If you want to email me your some of your topics during the week that you'd like for me to cover, Jake, Jake, at realestatejb.com is my email. And me personally, what I'm doing is my 12 unit building. have about 1.2 million in equity in it. So I'm pulling some of that equity out, and I'm looking to buy a 50 to 80 unit complex. I just closed on 20 acres in Alabama with a partnership that I put together, and we're looking at leasing that lot to a trucking company that wants to put a gas station and a eating facility there. So that's pretty interesting. That deal came to me from one of the guys that do my pest control for one of my other properties. And every day, just looking to progress and just looking to get better and follow your dreams and follow your goals. Let me see. Any other questions about anything that I mentioned so far? If not, I'm gonna cover a little bit about commercial. And we had a question about tax deeds. So let's see here. Somebody asked me, what is the difference between a tax certificate and a tax deed? Okay. Very, very, very important. So the county has an auction. It's only once a year, and it's for the back taxes that are owed on a property. That's how they keep up with the budget with the fire department, teachers, to pay the budget that the county has for teachers, firefighters, police officers. So if people don't pay their property taxes, the public library, that's a big portion as well. If people don't pay their property taxes, then that creates a deficit in the budget. So what the county does is by November 1st, if an individual is behind on their property taxes, they then set an auction date, not to auction off the property, but to auction off the taxes that are owed on the property. Okay. And the interest rate that an individual can gain starts at 18%. So right now in the bank, you can get a little bit in a CD, you can get about 5%. Savings account, obviously, it's a little bit less. But if you have money sitting around that you don't need for about 2 to 3 years, then you could buy a tax certificate. You can buy a tax certificate on a property, and you can get up to almost 18%. Well, it starts at 18%. And it goes down. So they have what's called a reverse bid auction, where person that bids the lowest interest rate is the person that wins that tax certificate. So if I bid 18%, there's another investor that bid 10%, that investor would win. The investor that bid 10%. So what you want to do is have about maybe at least 4 to 5 properties that you're interested in buying the tax certificate. You want to have a minimum threshold, say at least 8%, because you can get 5% in the bank with no risk at all. And these are very, very limited because obviously, property is worth more than 1 year of tax. So if you look up Miami-Dade County tax certificate auction, every county has this auction. It's not highly publicized. Those that are in the investment world, know. I actually came across it from a foreclosure deal I was looking at. Is how I found out about it several years ago. But that's a tax certificate. Okay. Now, a tax deed is when you have owned your tax certificate for, let's say, 3 years, and then the person still hasn't paid their taxes. Now you can take your tax certificate and go apply to the courthouse for a tax deed, which means you now say, hey, I want my money. It's been 3 years. I want my money. So then the county then puts the property up for auction. Okay. And then depending on the outcome of that auction, if nobody bids, then you end up with the property, which is called a tax deed. So you would acquire their property through a tax deed auction. If somebody does bid, the opening bid, where the auction starts at, is all the back taxes that are owed on the property plus all the interest. So that's where you get your money back at the auction. So let's say let's say your tax certificate was 2001. You brought it for $3,000, 10% interest. That's about $30 a year. So the opening bid at that auction would be for 3 years back taxes, $3,000. That's $9,000 plus the interest rate. So that auction would start at $9,300. Okay. So, and obviously somebody's going to buy a house worth 100 something thousand. They're going to bid, $1,300. So you can, if you have, I would say $10,000 or less and you don't need it for a couple years, tax certificates and tax deeds are definitely a place to start. Any questions about that? Any questions, raise your hand and I'll go ahead and call on you. Or you can type your question into the chat. Okay, one person says tax certificates, can you get out of it within the 3-year period? Okay, so if you got into tax certificates, I tell people if they have $500 or less and they want to get into, tax certificates or get into real estate investing, you have to have that tax certificate for 3 years before you can apply for a tax deed. So anytime during the 3 years, the owner of the property can pay off their back taxes. You can't contact the owner and say, hey, you owe me money, because the county can void your tax certificate, or they can sell your tax certificate to someone else. So you can't contact the owner, but the homeowner has up to 3 years to pay that one particular year. And if they don't pay it, then that's when you can apply for the tax deed. Okay, so when you apply for the tax deed, it's kind of like, hey, I want my money back. It's been 3 years, I haven't been paid. So that's kind of, you have to be prepared to have that money out there for at least a 3-year period. I've never come across anybody that's lost money. I know I've never lost money doing it. But it's a great place to start. It's a great place to start. All right. So I hope to see you all next Thursday. If you have any questions or have any topics during the week that you'd like for me to cover, certainly send me an email. I co-authored a book with Kevin Harrington from the TV show Shark Tank. So if you go to jakebutler.info, you can download a free copy of that book, jakebutler.info. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you all for coming.
You've been listening to the Patience and Progress audio experience. Tune in next time for another exciting episode where we'll be discussing entrepreneurship, how to create wealth, leaving a legacy, and how to become the best version of yourself. Don't forget to download your free copy of the best-selling book, Mind-Stirring Business Secrets, where Jake was a co-author with Kevin Harrington, one of the original sharks from the hit television show Shark Tank. Visit www.jakebutler.info for your free copy.